TikTok and short form content has changed the game for video creators, but is it really the best way to build an audience and create a business? And if you don't enjoy making TikTok videos, are you missing out on a big opportunity?
I think on average, YouTube is a lot more focused around community. I still think on TikTok, you can have a community, but I don't think they care as much.
Eric has organically built an audience on both platforms. With 7.7 million followers on TikTok and over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, he gives us an insight on the differences between TikTok and YouTube, covering everything from creating video content to doing sponsored content.
It's actually funny, the channel I'm on now started as a gaming channel. It used to be called Eric Struk Gaming, and I started doing Minecraft content and Minecraft shorts. I actually grew the channel completely from zero, so even being able to change it from like gaming to travel was like crazy. I think it's really up to the creator though. It's more of a personal decision. I think it's okay to do a bunch of different things. But for me, it came down to, okay, like what can I really do Minecraft full term, like long term here? Does it make sense to? And I just wasn't passionate about it. So then I decided to do travel. In terms of TikTok, I basically just use it as reposting because the way the platform's kind of structured, it's very oriented towards like businesses. And I mean, organic content still does well, but as someone who's trying to be a full-time YouTuber and like really grow the YouTube side of things, it's hard to carry an audience over from one platform to another because, for example, TikTok wants their users to stay on their platform. So if you're posting a video being like, hey, like go to my YouTube channel, go to my Instagram, like they don't want those people carrying over. So I've kind of just made the executive decision, like YouTube takes a lot of effort. So I'm going to put all my resources into growing that platform as opposed to like trying to carry them over from different places.
And which platform have you found more easier to grow on?
I find, I mean, they're not easy in any way. I mean, it's kind of like relative because I've been doing it for so long. Like I kind of know what works. To someone who's new, I'd probably say TikTok just because it's very oriented towards organic, kind of low production content, like just like very just off the rip, like what you're doing kind of stuff. I personally like the way YouTube is structured because when I make videos, I try and keep them a certain length, especially with like shorts, for example. So every single one of my shorts is between 35 and 50 seconds. So I kind of know like what markers I need to hit for a video to go viral. So like if I post a 40-second video on shorts and it gets like 80% retention and above, it's going to hit 1 million views. But I could post that same exact video on TikTok and it could get like 20k views, which is just weird because each platform treats the content differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I personally lean towards YouTube in my opinion.
And what have been your kind of growth strategies? Like how they differed between TikTok and YouTube? Like how strategic have you had to be for each platform?
So TikTok I found very frustrating in my opinion, because there'd be times where I'd be doing a series on TikTok for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the app would literally update and I'd see it update in the app store to a new version. And I wouldn't change anything about the series, but then just all of a sudden just wouldn't do well. So like the videos would be getting like 500k views, 400k views, million views, then like 15k. And I'm like, I didn't change anything, but there's an update. In terms of YouTube, my kind of strategy has been do short form and long form, but not competing with people like Mr. Beast or those kind of YouTubers. There were a few of my videos where I started doing that and doing like challenges, but it wasn't really personally fulfilling. So my current strategy is kind of finding niches that have a super good core community. So right now it's like travel and airlines and stuff. There's like a lot of airline enthusiasts, but looking at the existing content there, it's not updated. It's still very much like 5 years ago YouTube, very vlog style, which isn't bad. It's just older demographics. So I'm basically trying to find these sub niches and introduce like a new form of content. So I'm trying to bring in like a faster pace, entertainment focused content into like airlines and travel. And somehow I've been able to find success with it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You had a viral video about 8 months ago. So it was about you flying with the worst airline, which did amazing. What do you think makes a video go viral on YouTube versus on TikTok?
TikTok, it's a little bit like a lottery machine. Is probably the best. The best way I've heard it explained, and the best way I've kind of, I see it too. Like, it's very hard to know what goes viral. A lot of it's just like shock value, to be honest. It's shock
Right.
value, like really effective hooks that are pretty clickbaity, to be quite honest. Um, I find, especially YouTube on long form, there needs to be obviously there's an element of shock value and clickbait or whatnot. Like I flew the world's worst airline. Like people want to see that. They're like, "What's the airline?" Like I want to check it out. But especially with like long form YouTube, you have to be able to tell a story in some capacity. You have to be able to keep the viewer because it's not like a 30-second TikTok. You have to keep someone there for like 8 minutes, 15 minutes. So like you have to really build out a beginning to end. So that's what I've been doing.
So you're still making short form content as well on YouTube as well as long form content. How do you change your editing to make it more of an engaging long form video or short form video? Like, does your editing differ, or like the way you approach editing differ?
That's actually a really interesting question because it's what I'm going through right now.
Oh,
So
right.
with short form, I had always been doing like super just fast paced editing, just like constant cuts, like no breathing room. But recently with my long form videos, I've been noticing like I don't need to be super fast paced. I've been paying more attention to like what my audience is watching them. And I think especially my travel stuff, I think that my primary audience is like 35 to 44-year-olds. So it doesn't make sense to do these like super quick cuts. So I've actually been making a conscious effort to like slow the videos down so it's more digestible.
Yeah.
Um, and there's also other things like with short form, it's like a lot more of like sound effects and stuff like that, like more fast paced. I try and do, but in the long form, I'm trying to work towards making it more cinematic, making it more docu style. That's kind of the end goal, but I'm definitely like in that transition period. Like I'm only starting to get into that, so probably in a year I'll get there. But we're still in the learning process on that one.
No, I feel like I've watched your videos and I think they're really engaging. Like, what do you think makes a good video, regardless of whether you're creating on YouTube or TikTok? Like, what keeps viewers watching?
I think there's two sides of that. I think it could be broken down into people who are really good at telling stories and people who just have like a very contagious personality. For example, like a creator like KSI, Logan Paul, like those people, they don't necessarily need to have a super structured story. They're just infectious personalities and people like them for them. I'm not really this like extrovert person, like I'm very introverted. So with my videos, I put like a lot of focus onto planning how it's going to be edited, how it's going to be paced, and like just like really trying to build out a story because I'm self-aware enough to know like I'm not this super extroverted person, so I have to kind of take the other route. So I think those are the two things: either being able to tell a super good story, personality, and if you could do both, then that's like a grand slam.
Yeah. And do you think it's possible to build the same type of community on TikTok as it is YouTube? Because you mentioned that you're kind of shifting your focus more towards YouTube. So I'm wondering what the reason is for that.
I think on average, YouTube is a lot more focused around community. I still think on TikTok, you can have a community, but I don't think they care as much, if that makes
Right.
sense. Unless
Yeah.
you're like a Charlie D'Amelio, like actual celebrity, I don't think they're that authentic.
Mm.
At least in my experience, like there's been times on TikTok where I'd try and do merch or I'd try and do something outside of TikTok. And then it's like, oh, okay, like I have all these people watching these videos and people being like, oh, this is awesome. But then it just doesn't convert at all.
Right.
But then on the flip side, ever since I've been doing YouTube and stuff, like I'll like get emails from people being like, you should do this. Like just contacting me from external places, just be like, hey, you should do this. I think you should do this video. They're like, oh, this video did this much for me. So I found it a lot easier to build a community on YouTube. It also comes down to the fact like when someone's watching like an 8 to 15 minute video of you, it's a lot easier to build a connection than
Mm.
just a bunch of random like 30-second videos. I think there's just more of a genuine connection on YouTube as opposed to TikTok. But I think both platforms have the ability to build some sort of community.
And is that why you shifted focus to YouTube, or was there another reason?
Um, the reason why I switched to YouTube personally, I might get backlash for it, but it's like I don't like the way TikTok treats its creators. I really don't. For example, they don't want to do, especially in Canada, they don't want to do creator fund at
Mhm.
all. So they don't want to pay their creators. So essentially, people are just making content for free. I actually had a conversation with one of the higher ups at TikTok in Canada, and I asked him the question like, "Are you going to do the creator fund in Canada? You've been promising this for 2 years. Like, where is it?" and he said to me, "Oh, we would rather give creators the opportunity to build their own stores with Shopify and like third parties." I'm like, "So you don't want to support your creators on your own because it would cut into their margins."
Mm.
And then on the other hand, you have YouTube where there's AdSense, there used to be the Shorts fund, but now it's just straight AdSense. And even though like sometimes it might not necessarily be a lot, at least someone could actually get paid for their work
Yeah.
just by posting. On TikTok, you don't get that. So like you're just posting for free at the end of the day. And then what TikTok will always tell creators is like, "Oh, just post more, post more." And then creators like, "Okay, whatever." But on the flip side, on the business side, that's what they want because then people are subject to more ads and whatnot. So that was the main reason why I switched. As well, TikTok introduced new ad policies where if you do a branded campaign and have hashtag ad, the video gets absolutely throttled unless the company puts budget behind it, like ad budget. And YouTube just doesn't do that. For example, I posted a ad on my YouTube Shorts that got 19 million views, and that would just never happen on TikTok because as soon as you hashtag ad, you have to put ad spend behind it because that's one of their business models on TikTok. Is there kind of like how Facebook has their ad marketplace, TikTok has theirs. So I didn't like the feel of that. I felt like it just wasn't good for me. And even the fact that I do series and then have to switch it up, I was just like, YouTube, I want to do YouTube. Like that's always been the end goal for me. I'd rather do it. I think Google has the long-term play if TikTok gets banned as well. So there are just all those kind of factors that went into it.
What about other revenue streams as a creator business, though? Because I read on Twitter that you once wrote brands are reaching out to you more about TikTok than they are YouTube. Why do you think that is?
I think this is definitely tinfoil hat, but it's kind of like my outside opinion. I think brands are slow to adapt. I think brands, for example, when I started TikTok in 2018, 2019, brands weren't there yet. But then they started coming in and I noticed it. And now all the brands are there, but they won't look at other platforms. Like they're kind of familiar with Reels, but especially like YouTube Shorts, like brands haven't really expanded there yet. I think as well from a brand perspective, I think the ad rates for ad spend on TikTok is much lower. So it makes sense for them to be there.
Right.
And the way that TikTok's kind of positioning themselves as a platform almost feels like Amazon, but like videos promoting the products.
Yeah.
So like that whole ecosystem is really focused around e-commerce. So it makes sense for brands to be there. That's probably like the best analogy I could give. I mean, YouTube obviously has its brand deals with like Surfshark, VPN, like all that kind of stuff. But I think TikTok as a platform is just e-commerce central, and it makes sense, and it does well doing it. Like when you see they have entire trends like TikTok made me buy this, Costco finds, Amazon finds. So like I think it makes sense for brands to be on TikTok.
Yeah. But is it more difficult to integrate a brand into a sponsored TikTok video versus a YouTube video? Because I always think, well, if you've only got a really short snippet to include a brand, then that brand is pretty much the entire video. Whereas in YouTube, I feel like you can integrate it within a story. So like, how do you go about brand deals in each platform?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that. So there's definitely trade-offs when you do short form because either it's very natural and there's not a huge ad placement. So like let's say it's a 40-second video, maybe 10 seconds of it is ad-like. The alternative to that is the entire video is sponsored, or it's more of just like a brand awareness campaign where it's not really pushing the brand, but like they're affiliated in some capacity. So I feel like it's harder, and I think that's why like UGC content has become so popular because they're like, why would I pay a mid-tier to high-tier creator like $5,000 when I could pay 50 people $100 each to try and get way more outreach?
Yeah.
But on YouTube, I think it's also more forgiving because you have the ability to build, especially in long form videos, you have the ability to build up a trust. So in a short form video, like you don't really have the chance to build any trust with the audience. But in a long form video, you could like intro it, go 2, 3, 4 minutes. They know they're in the video. And if the creator's smart about it or does it seamlessly, they could be like, hey, I'm taking this brand deal because it's allowing me to make this video. And then audiences are like, oh, you know what? I've watched 4 minutes up to this point. Like I could forgive this. Like it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there's that ability on short form. I know at least from my experience when I've just done short form ads, it's like either the full thing is an ad and people just don't like it because it's just old school ad placement, or it's the thing where it's like 10 seconds and then the brand's like, but I'm like, well, if you want views, like this is the kind of trade-off you have to come to. But I think on
Yeah.
YouTube you could kind of get away with a lot more.
So do you feel like on YouTube you could do almost every single video sponsored versus like you know what I mean in terms of frequency of doing sponsored content? How comfortable do you feel on each platform then?
I think on YouTube, because it's been around so long, audiences are used to it. Like on pretty much every video the audience watches, there's some sort of an ad placement. I think people have just kind of accepted, like, and people have gotten smart enough as well and more familiar with the creator economy to understand, like, okay, these people, like, it's their job. It makes sense. And if it's like, if the creator is doing their due diligence and promoting a product that's actually good and that could benefit the community, I think it's solid.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I forgot the rest of the question. Could you repeat the other part?
Yeah, it's just about how comfortable you feel in terms of frequency of doing sponsored content on each platform. Like, do you feel more comfortable doing it on YouTube? Whereas like TikTok, like how often would you do sponsored content as a TikTok creator?
Oh, okay, yeah. So on TikTok, I wouldn't do it every time because then you get. There's been times where I'd have like 3 brand deals like very close together, and all the comments are like sell out, like you're just doing this for the money, and I think it's because it's so quick paced content. There's no room for forgiveness. If it's like constant ads and they're like, okay, you're a sellout.
Yeah.
But I think YouTube, especially long form YouTube, is viewed more of like a show, and like people are just used to that ad experience.
Yeah. And you've kind of briefly mentioned how much you could potentially charge for a TikTok video. Like, how would you compare the rates for YouTube and TikTok sponsored content? Like ballpark figures even.
It really depends. Like there's so many factors that go into it because I'm trying to say it from like a generalized statement.
Yeah.
So like it depends on the creator's niche. So if they're just like gaming versus like finance, like there's gonna be a big discrepancy there. How strong their core audience is, what their average views are, and whatnot. I think on TikTok you have a lot less leverage as a creator because there's so many people doing it. Like if I say no to and I'll give this analogy. So when I started TikTok, I could basically get away with being like, I want like 10K for a video, give them the whole breakdown. They're like, okay, that makes sense. Now, almost every single email I get is, we'll give you a free product. We'll give you $200.
Oh,
because the whole like UGC wave really just devalued the market. And because there's so many creators, if I say no, they're going to go to another creator that's going to say yes. So the brands don't really care. Like creators don't have much leverage unless you are the top of your niche or you have insane numbers to back it up. But I think with long form YouTube, creators have much more leverage because with long form YouTube, you have a community and you're like, hey, like this is my community. Like this is my baby. Like these people trust me. They care about me. I'm not going to promote your product for this amount of money. And as well on YouTube, like there's not on YouTube compared to TikTok, there's not as many like long form creators that could pull the amount of views that they are. So I find in terms of negotiating power, creators have a lot more on YouTube as opposed to TikTok. And that was another reason why I left the TikTok side of things, because I'm just like, it wasn't making sense financially.
Yeah.
I think the way I look at it too is there's like micro creators, mid-tier creators, and like top tier creators. Top tier creators can get away with it because they're basically celebrities. I'd consider myself a mid-tier creator, so I'm in this like awkward position where I'm not up top, but I'm not down below. And then micro creators get a lot too because it's like brands view it as UGC content. A lot of the time when you're starting out, and even when I was starting out, like I didn't know my value. Brands like, here's $100. I'm like, cool, I'll do a video. Like that's $100. I made money by posting a TikTok. So that's kind of how I view the whole brand and platform situation.
Yeah, but I'm still really surprised because 7.7 million followers, like that is a lot. I'm surprised that brands even think to say, oh, I'll give you a free product in exchange for like sponsored content, which is crazy. How did you figure out what your value was as a creator, and like how did you build that confidence to start negotiating for what you thought you deserved?
I think, well, first of all, getting an agency was a good one because I had no idea, and then I'd have like conversations with managers and they're like, what are you doing? Like, this is your value, and they like really break it down for me. it's just really over time, like understanding like what you have, and especially if you have multiple platforms, you could leverage that as well. Because I've only started doing this recently because I think you spoke to him. I forget
Justin?
his name.
Justin
Justin,
Moore,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I like sent him a DM on Twitter. He's like, "What are you doing?" um, so recently, I've been like leveraging multiple platforms. So like a brand will come to me like, "Hey, like we want to do a TikTok." I'm like, "Well, I'll also do a YouTube integration and YouTube short, and I'll make a piece of UGC content for you." So I think that for all creators, like being able to leverage multiple platforms and like having the social proof to back it up gives you a lot more credibility, because brands, they're learning too. Like
Mm,
most of the time, if you actually sit down with a brand, like they're kind of just dipping their toes in the water. A lot of the people come from more of a traditional marketing background, on like television, radio, broadcast, and whatnot, and it's still kind of new to them.
yeah.
So you almost have to educate them at the same time and teach them like, hey, this is why I have value. Sure, you could go to other creators, but here's my proven track record of deals I've done, and these are results I can get you to if you trust me.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's times where they're like, no, it's out of our budget, and unfortunately, in those situations, I'm just like, okay, that's your decision. I respect it. But it's the same on both ends. Like as a creator, there's always going to be another brand. For brands, there's always going to be another creator. So I
Mm.
just try not to get too hung up on it.
And how do you try to make, when you're doing brand deals, how do you try to make it authentic to the content that you're already doing so it's authentic to your audience?
So I try and just really integrate it. I don't really want to do a deal where it's here's a script, go read it. I just don't like that, and I've been doing it. I've definitely done it in the past, but I've learned like it's just not. It doesn't perform well, and it's not good, and I
Yeah.
get backlash for it, so I just don't do it. The way I kind of approach it now is trying to find brands that make sense in the videos I do. For example, one of the ones I have upcoming is going to be a like wallet that has like protection and stuff like that. It's like a travel wallet basically. And the way I'm just going to do it is say like, hey, this is like my go-to travel wallet in airports. And you know, obviously I want to like test it out and like review it and make sure it's as good as it is before I promote it. But just kind of like integrating it naturally into the story, not being like, there's obviously like sometimes you'll see an ad placement, it's like just very abrupt. And I
Yeah.
don't think it does well because like I've done it in the past and the retention curve will go like that and just like straight dip.
Yeah.
So finding ways just to like naturally build it into the story. So, you know, let's say it was a VPN deal. If I'm traveling, I'd be like, oh, and while I travel, I could protect my data, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like just finding a way to like weave it into the story of the video is probably the best way to do it. And also preface it by like saying to your audience, I'm doing this deal or something along these lines. Like, I'm doing this deal to reinvest this money back into the channel to make better
Mm.
content for you guys. Cause then they're like, okay, he's not just taking the money to pocket it and we're just, you know, the customers. Like, he's actually taking this money and like going on an expensive flight and like this is covering the expenses. So like almost just having a conversation with your audience and being completely transparent and not like building a wall and be like, hey, like this is what I'm doing. I hope you guys understand. And most of the time, like they're forgiving because people have been on social media for the last, especially during COVID, it's like so much, like people have gotten very familiar with it.
Yeah.
And I find audiences are quite receptive just to complete transparency.
I was actually quite surprised to find that you're a student because you're still writing, filming, and editing all of your content, which I think is absolutely crazy. How are you managing to make great videos which even involve things like travel whilst you're staying on top of like, you know, university, multiple platforms, and you're limited on both time and money? Like, how are you doing all of this?
Um, Sometimes I'll have to skip classes, unfortunately. Yeah, so I'm a fourth year media production student, which kind of helps because it's like same wheelhouse. So I'm like full-time student plus internship plus creator.
Wow.
So I really just try and like cut out everything that's distracting. I used to play a lot of video games, had to like absolutely cut that out. But I'll try and like batch film content, especially my long form stuff. So I think a month ago, I booked a flight to the west side of Canada. That was like one video. Flew from there to another city the same day. That was a second video, and then I flew home.
Oh, wow.
Um, so I just try and like batch it together. And I think 2 weeks ago, I filmed 3 videos over 24 hours. but then that's 3 weeks worth of content. So like once it's filmed, it's like pretty easy because I could just, when I'm not doing schoolwork, I could just edit and do it. But really, like the filming takes the most. So whenever I have free time is when I try and film. For example, today is like I'm filming another video.
Yeah.
Because this is like my one day between classes. I'm like, okay, I have like 8 hours I can film, and then I can edit throughout the week. So it's really just being like time management, pre-planning things, and like really just batching it together. And then once you have the funds to do so, offload the work.
Yeah.
I kind of I struggle with it because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Like I've tried working with editors, and they're great, but I guess I'm just like selfish in the extent where I'm like I want it to be my vision,
Yeah.
and like the way I see it is like I could tell someone to make these changes, but it's going to take like 10 times longer than just going in there and doing it myself.
Yeah. And how strong is that vision beforehand? Like, do you have like storyboards? Do you plan out all your shots beforehand? Because how do you, I'm just wondering how that looks like when you're doing things like travel. Like, how much can you actually prepare what you're going to film ahead of time?
I think because I've been doing content for a while and just because I'm a pretty visual person, I could pretty much pre-plan almost the entire video.
Oh, wow.
Usually like I'll write it out into like a Notion or Google Doc, like what the general scenes are going to be. I usually like heavily script the intro or like first 2 minutes because I find that's the most important part. Um, but in terms of like my airline series, for example, like I've been doing it so long, I've done like 5 or 6 videos of it now. Like it's pretty much second nature to me. It's like, all right, first set, it's gonna be like 40-second intro. Then we're gonna buy the ticket. Then we're gonna head to the airport, do the check-in process, and like it's like pretty normal at this point. For example, my video today, I just like visually ran through like all the locations I'm gonna go to because I'm filming in my city. It's a little bit easier because I've like been to all these areas. So I'm like, okay, I know where I want to like set up all my shots.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think everyone has that skill. I think a lot of it has come from just making so many videos over the years. Editing the videos myself has been very helpful because it's really shown me like, hey, these are things I don't like and these are things I do like. So I just know from editing my own videos like how I want to set things up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not an easy process. It's kind of chaotic.
Yeah. And what do you think the trends for video content will be? Because I feel like recently we've seen that like short form content has been really popular and trendy. Do you think that's going to continue, or do you think things will change?
I don't think it's going to go away. I don't think it can go away. I think maybe it might get longer. I mean, it's hard to say because content is really up to the person consuming it, right? Like, for example, the content I consume is going to be completely different from the content you consume. And this is something I kind of struggle with when like talking about this stuff is because like I have this perspective, but then someone else will have a completely different perspective because they see different things. I think short form content, it's always going to be around. There's always going to be the clickbait side of things. There's always going to be like the actual value side of things in short form content. And I think it comes down to what you're consuming. Long form content, same thing. I think there's to the end of the earth at this point. There's going to be like Mr. Beast style videos now, like whatever the trends are. But I also think on the flip side, there's going to be those organic stories. I think it's very hard to predict. I think it's definitely going to lean more in towards some sort of a narrative, some sort of more authentic story based videos, because I do think that the whole spend as much money on a video as possible trend is getting a little bit old and people are getting somewhat numb to it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where like you can't really see the innovation until it's already happened. It's kind of like the whole AI thing right now. Like people 5 years ago were like, like this could be a thing, and now we're like living in it. But 5 years from now, we'll be like, oh, like that happens so fast.
True.
Like, why didn't we see this coming? Like it's very hard to see while you're in it. And I think you just kind of got to wait and see and just keep creating and innovating, and then just naturally something new will pop up.
Yeah, and like shifting your path as you see what's coming up, I guess, which is what you've been doing as well. So I'm going to end with a quick fire round. So I'm going to ask you the same questions that I ask every creator that comes on air. So what's your favorite thing about being a creator?
Honestly, just the freedom to make whatever I want to make, especially being in school for media and like film and getting insight into the real industry. I like the fact that I could go out and film what I want to film. I don't really have to storyboard it, because when it comes to like TV or stuff, you have to storyboard everything. You have to get it approved by like 4 people,
Oh,
and
wow.
everything has to be greenlit. Like, it's a total headache.
Yeah.
And I've just realized, being a creator, like, you have complete freedom to do whatever you want. Like, I could fly to any place, film a video. Obviously, sometimes you should get permission, or if you're filming like a TV show, you need to get permission. But as a creator, you could kind of get away with, I'm just someone with a camera. So I really like that.
And what gives you the most inspiration for what you create?
At this point, it's just personal passion. There was a point where it was like I was really just chasing views. Now it's just like whatever video I find genuinely interesting. Right now that's travel. I just want to see the world. I want to experience life, and I want to make videos that kind of reflect that. So I think that kind of is what inspires me these days.
I love that. And what's one tool that helps you to be a creator?
One tool. I mean, editing software. That's great.
True. Can't live without that.
Honestly, it may be not the normal thing, but I guess like fitness and just taking care of my own health. I was at a point, especially during COVID, where it's just like extreme burnout, just didn't take care of myself very well. I think you need to take care of, your mind, your body, and everything outside of your job, because that carries over to when you are doing it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing to me, is just taking care of myself in all aspects.
I guess this leads on to the next question then, which is, what's one thing that helps with your creator work-life balance? Is that the same answer?
Work-life balance. That's something I actually struggle with because I'm like always trying to do work. Realistically, I think at this point it's like my girlfriend. She's the one that really grounds me. She's like, all right, like, you've been doing this all day. Like, let's do something else. Let's go out. Let's not sit in front of the computer. So I think that's honestly, that's probably been like the biggest thing that's helped me do a work-life balance. Otherwise, I think I would literally just be doing videos all day. That would be very unhealthy.
Crazy. And what's one piece of advice that you'd give to other creators?
There's a lot I could give. Probably being original, staying true to yourself, and not really giving up on your dream. I think a lot of people get discouraged. I know when I was starting out with content, I think a lot of creators go through this too. Everyone doubts them. Everyone's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Just having this like undeniable vision and being like, this is what I want. I'm going to get this, even if everyone is against me. I think that's the biggest thing. And that's the one thing that's resonated with me. Because I mean, I vividly remember in high school, like, kids being like, you're not going to do this, like making fun of me, whatever, like the whole 9 yards. And then I just kept doing it, kept grinding at it, kept learning, kept trying to make videos, and now I'm able to do it as a job. So
I love that.
Keeping the dream alive.
Yeah, I love that you proved everyone wrong. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming on air. This has been such a fun conversation about YouTube and TikTok and just video content in general. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's been amazing. I love doing this kind of stuff.
You can find Eric on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And if sponsorships are a part of your creator business, check out Passionfroot for an easier way to manage them.